So, what can we trust? It would be nice if we could trust our own eyes, our own perception of what's in front of us, but as we learn from Buddha's teachings, that's not always exactly accurate, even when we see something. But of course, many things are happening in the world that we don't even have the ability to directly see. We have to rely on the reports of others. So how do we know what to trust? There are books, there are newspapers and magazines, online or in print, and then there's everything else on the web. And so you might have the sense that just because something's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Great. But actually, just because something's in the newspaper, that doesn't mean it's true. And this was very visible back in even the 1890s, this isn't a new thing, with the rise of yellow journalism, a competition between Joseph Pulitzer and William Hearst to really see whose paper could sell more based on extremely sensationalist headlines and articles. So nowadays, it's perhaps not that different, but again, it's nothing new. And even books aren't particularly safe, just as a category. Now, anyone can self-publish on Amazon, just like we do. But it wasn't even always like that. And even in the 1960s, you had Lobsang Rampa, who wrote books on his experience, his autobiography as being a Tibetan Lama. But he was just an Irish plumber. And it sold millions of copies, completely misrepresenting Tibet and Tibetan Buddhism. So just because something's in a book, or in the newspaper, or online, doesn't mean it's true. And of course, for people on social media, you know how your kind aunt has sent you many notes on Facebook saying that, if you get COVID, all you need to do is eat a garlic clove and then you'll be cured. That's obviously out of a motivation of love, but not exactly good advice. So it's one thing for us to say, okay, I know I can't trust everything. But especially now, when there's a lot of conflicts going on in the world and an election is coming up, it's actually getting trickier and trickier. And there was a BBC investigation, and others have investigated this as well, that there are many news sites popping up that look like a valid American newspaper. The Houston Crier or Dallas Tribune. These may or may not be real papers. And there's a network of about 170 of them operating out of Russia, seemingly. And again, they look legitimate, but most of the articles there are pretty harmless, but a few of them will say things like, politicians in Ukraine, so government officials in Ukraine or the First Lady of Ukraine, have used US military aid money to go and buy a yacht or $1 million car. And so this hasn't happened, but an article is out there saying this, people start sharing it, and soon even some of our Congress people are sharing it on their social media accounts and even citing these reports in congressional hearings about aid for Ukraine, military aid for Ukraine. So this is really concerning. And part of why these websites for these newspapers are so convincing is not just that there's one article with a somewhat crazy headline, but the fact that the rest of the website looks like it's a valid news site. It's filled with articles. And where are those other articles coming from? AI. And so what they can actually do is basically ask AI to rewrite articles that are on other websites so it doesn't look like complete plagiarism. And they can even put in, have a slightly Republican bent or, criticize Ukraine a little bit. And so part of what this report was showing, this investigation, is that on some of these sites, when they're copying and pasting the text in, they forget to take out the prompts given to the AI, so you can actually see what it was in some cases. So this, in fact, is, using AI for not so good of a purpose. And we have heard stories of many other kind of nefarious things that AI can be used for. So it can be used for some okay things too, like rewriting some text to maybe make it more clear, more interesting. Unfortunately, people also use it for generating or rewriting their school papers, but it's really becoming mainstream. The platform that we use for building the Sravasti Abbey website now is updated so that if you want to build a new website, you just give its built-in AI engine a prompt, like, I want a website for a fancy Italian website, and it will just generate the whole website for you. Like text, images, here, done. So I guess that could be helpful. I haven't asked it to generate a website for a Tibetan Buddhist abbey. I'm not sure what it would give us. I'm just going to keep the wording that we've made. Venerable Chuni approves with not doing this. And so the difficulty starts to become, though, is AI something we can trust? Now, of course, I'm not talking about some sort of sci-fi Skynet, it's going to kill us. That's not what I mean. And I wanted to give some examples because I know that not everyone here has had the opportunity to interact with ChatGPT or use some of these AI tools. And so a simple way you might be using this is just kind of asking it some questions, and it's more conversational than if you just use Google. So for instance, I asked ChatGPT what are some of the texts that Thupten Chodron has translated. And I will read the answer to you. I know that. Let me read ChatGPT's answer to you. ChatGPT replied, Thupten Chodron has translated and authored several significant Buddhist texts, particularly within the context of Tibetan Buddhism. Some of her notable translations and works include The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings, a comprehensive guide to key Buddhist concepts, When the Sky Clears, Bringing Back the Buddha's Teachings, a translation and commentary on various teachings, The Sutra of Golden Light, an important Mahayana sutra, and Opening the Heart of the Faithful, a translation of texts related to Tara practices. She also offers teachings and commentaries on various texts, making Buddhist teachings accessible to a broader audience. If you're interested in specific titles or themes, let me know. And I'll say, all AI is not created the same. Google's AI chatbot, Gemini, the first bit said, Venerable Thupten Chodron isn't known for translating existing Tibetan Buddhist texts into English. Her area of expertise lies in making the Dharma, or Buddhist teachings, accessible through clear and practical explanations. Good job, Google. That was Google's AI, gave that. And I'll say, Venerable Kadro, I want to let you know what ChatGPT thinks you've published. How to Meditate, a Practical Guide, a comprehensive guide to various meditation techniques suitable for beginners and experienced practitioners alike. How to Meditate, a practical guide to making friends with your mind. Another practical guide emphasizing meditation as a tool for understanding and transforming the mind. Transforming Problems into Happiness, explores Buddhist teachings on transforming adversity into opportunities for growth and happiness. Awakening the Kind Heart, how to meditate on compassion, focuses on practices and meditations that cultivate compassion. Kindness, Clarity, and Insight, co-authored with Jeffrey Hopkins. This book discusses compassion and wisdom in Tibetan Buddhism. And for those of you who don't know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama actually wrote that book. Transforming Problems into Happiness is Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I believe. So anyways, don't ask ChatGPT for book recommendations. So what this is called when AI chatbots or large language models makes things up, this is called hallucinating. And, and there was recently an article in the MIT Technology Review titled, Why Does AI Hallucinate? And so I wanted to share this with you because I think it's really helpful to look at this to actually understand what these chatbots, what these language models are doing. Because when we don't understand what we're doing, what they're doing, we might think they're reliable. And so some other examples that this article gave, it didn't know about it not knowing your actual bibliography, vulnerable children. It didn't cite that as a problem. But there was a chatbot made by the World Health Organization that, when asked about health clinics in San Francisco, just made up names and addresses for clinics that didn't exist. And a lawyer had asked for some past court documents, judicial opinions, and then submitted them for a case he was in and was told these were all made up, and was fined because of that. So I'm going to read this because I think that it's really clear, and if I just try to paraphrase it, it's probably going to be less clear. So it's just a few paragraphs. But the first thing to note is that making stuff up is exactly what these models are designed to do. When you ask a chatbot a question, it draws its response from the large language model that underpins it. But it's not like looking up information in a database or using a search engine on the web. Inside, you'll find billions and billions of numbers. It uses these numbers to calculate its responses from scratch, producing new sequences of words on the fly. A lot of the text that a large language model generates looks as if it could have been copy-pasted from a database or a real web page. But as in most works of fiction, the resemblances are coincidental. A large language model is more like an infinite magic 8-ball than an encyclopedia. Large language models generate text by predicting the next word in a sequence. If a model sees "the cat sat," it may guess "on." That new sequence is fed back into the model, which may now guess "the." That one trick is enough to generate almost any kind of text you can think of, from Amazon listings to haiku to fan fiction to computer code. It is really good at that. To magazine articles and so much more. So think of the billion of numbers inside a large language model as a vast spreadsheet that captures the statistical likelihood that certain words will appear along certain other words. The values in the spreadsheet get set when the model is trained, a process that adjusts those values over and over again until the model's guesses mirror the linguistic patterns found across terabytes of text taken from the internet. The takeaway here? It's all hallucination. But we only call it that when we notice it's wrong. The problem is, large language models are so good at what they do that what they make up looks right most of the time. And that makes trusting them hard. So you could imagine that in the future, vulnerable children might write a book titled "Opening the Heart of the Faithful" or When the Sky Clears, Bringing Back the Buddha's Teachings. Those sound plausible, but they don't actually exist. So what to do about this? Not to just give up and decide we can't trust anything ever again. That doesn't seem very helpful. But I was thinking about, where are there teachings on what we can trust? How can we decide what is actually reliable? And there's a whole teaching on that. Dharmakirti's text, the Pramanavartika, that's an argument of why we can rely on the Buddha, why the Buddha is actually trustworthy. And so I won't go into the specific syllogisms presented, but there's basically this logical step-by-step argument. First, that the Buddha generated great compassion. That was his starting motivation. And the text, of course, goes into proving how is it possible to do so, but I won't go into that. Then what did the Buddha do out of that motivation of great compassion? And this is before he was actually the Buddha. This was when he was just a bodhisattva. He familiarized extensively with the wisdom realizing selflessness and did so for the sake of others. Out of that, he generated abandonments, referred to in the text as the sugata, and so abandoning, for instance, the afflictions and suffering. And then progressed even beyond that to attain the ability to teach others, the ability to help others through omniscience. And so from that, we would say he is reliable, or the Sanskrit term used is pramana. So I think we can actually use this as a little bit of a framework to evaluate the information that we're seeing in the news and books and magazines, when again now, it's really hard to tell what's true and what isn't. So first is to think about the motivation. That there's a lot of information out there that's going to be politically motivated during the election season, or articles that are called clickbait, in that, the website, that whatever it is, really just wants you to click on it and read it. So when it sounds too good to be true, or that, you'll never guess what this, middle-aged woman in Newport, discovered, these are things just to get you to click, because then they get ad money. So, ask yourself, it's like, what might be the motivation for this piece of information? Whether it could be a YouTube video, whatever it is. Are there ads running? There's normally ads many places, but just kind of asking that self, what might this person's motivation be? Because it might not be good. And second, so we know that the Buddha actually did all of this work. He familiarized with the wisdom realizing selflessness. That's why we're not Buddhas. We haven't done that yet. So for something to be like a new piece of information, hopefully that person has done something to get that information. If you just want to read random people's thoughts online, that's fine, but you have your own thoughts, and they might be better thoughts even. So for me, I really want to see that there is an investigation, or that there was research done. And so really asking, is this just someone's opinion, or what are they citing? What was the work done that actually makes this information trustworthy more than just my own guesses, my own thoughts? And so third, the Buddha abandoned all of these problems, his affliction, suffering, things like that. So what I was thinking of here is to look for the lack of red flags. So one red flag is all caps. No article headline needs to be in all caps. Are there lots of exclamation marks? Are there sensational headlines? Are there things that kind of look too good to be true? When you're actually in the article, are there all of these pop-ups? Are there, ads everywhere? Again, lots of newspapers do need to run some ads to support themselves, but are there ads everywhere? If you're watching a video, is it 30 minutes before they'll actually tell you the punchline that relates to the headline? It's not a good sign. Do they want you to sign up for something and buy things? I mean, you know what these red flags are. So if there's none of them, that's a great sign. And then fourth, the Buddha actually obtained this ability to be omniscient by practicing the path. He knew how to teach the path to all of us. So what's the source of knowledge? That often when we're looking at a newspaper article, it might be coming from a prior source. Is it some random YouTuber who has a major scoop on a Ukraine government official? That doesn't make a lot of sense. If the FBI had a major scoop on a Ukraine government official, okay, that seems more believable. But if it's just a YouTuber saying that, his cousin is in the FBI and, has told him this stuff, it's like, okay, I'm skeptical then. So really ask, who's the source of this information? And when it's just generically attributed to scientists or even a Stanford scientist, real publications have names associated with them, and you should be able to actually find information on that person if you search for them. So be a little bit skeptical and really try to figure out where's the source of this information. So the Buddha wanted us to be a little bit skeptical, not to give up on the world and think there's no way to know anything. And there's a few different variations of this quote, but I have this version in my email signature, that the Buddha said, "Analyze my words as one would analyze gold, through melting, refining, polishing, and adopting them then. The skillful should not engage in them out of admiration or for other reasons." And so even if we have great confidence that the Buddha is reliable, we still need to really analyze his teachings. So much more so for all of the random stuff that exists on the internet now. And especially now that really good sounding stuff can come from these chatbots, from AI that's really permeating a lot of things and is sometimes making things up. I asked ChatGPT the origin of that quote, and it said the Kalama Sutta, which is not where it's from, but at least the Kalama Sutta also teaches that we should be really analyzing things critically, seeing if they make sense, and reflect our own experience.